Hi, I'm Amy Stoneham. I'm the editor of Hidden Wires, and I'm joined today by Mitch Klein, the executive director of Z-Wave. Hi, Mitch. How are you?
Hi, Amy. Doing great, and thank you for having me on your podcast.
Thank you so much for joining us. To start off, it's been a really big year for Z-Wave Alliance. Can you give us a bit of an update on some of the Alliance's achievements this year or last year?
Yeah, there's actually been quite a bit of news, and sometimes fallen into the background. But from the base level, we announced our new board of directors, which has John Adams now as our new CEO. John Adams is with Amazon. You probably recognize the name Ring. So he stepped in as the new CEO. So the new board is pretty exciting news. I think slightly more exciting news than that is the fact that the source code for Z-Wave has been now made available to all of the Z-Wave Alliance members. I'd call it open source, but technically it's only open to Z-Wave Alliance members, but essentially it enables any member to then take the source code and essentially do pull requests, contribute to the software, which basically opens up the ability to deliver more features, more functionality, more testing, because you have more software contributors.
Right.
So that's actually pretty exciting news.
Yeah.
And even more exciting than that is that we had a third-party software company that we engaged with, a company called Exogen, and they actually took the open source and ported it off to an independent third-party silicon. What does that mean? Well, what that means is that, as of right now, you can purchase Z-Wave chips only from Silicon Labs.
Right.
And very soon you'll be able to have additional sources to be able to purchase your Z-Wave chips. And why does that matter? Simply means that, again, more chips, more variability, more use cases, and basically more resources. So pretty exciting.
Excellent.
And I can keep going because then we also, long range has been really big for us as well. Products have hit the market. We have a couple of press announcements coming up with some really special products coming out. Well, stay tuned for that. It's premature to announce it. And, long range, the obvious is, getting a mile plus, which has been field tested. But it also enables us to get beyond the standard limitation of 256 devices and goes up to 4,000 per hub. So anyway, and I can keep going, but those are really the key points. There's been a lot going on. We're pretty excited.
Excellent. Yeah. Yeah, sounds really good. And obviously we're looking forward to seeing what's coming up as well. So yeah, thank you for that. Of course, you've just released your 2023 report. Turning to that, why I noticed you've also included now the UK, France, Germany. Why did you choose to include those regions, and why specifically those regions as well this year?
Actually, a great question. The first question I would answer is, why did we even go outside the US? Because typically our surveys have been done, our reports have been focused on US because it is the largest market. But we're not doing the industry much service if all we do is focus on the US. So clearly we felt it was important to go beyond that. We chose those three countries because, quite simply put, they're the biggest in terms of devices, smart home devices for us to go after. And, unlike the US, which is, 50 some odd, states, in Europe, you can't just say Europe because each country clearly has its own culture. And so we chose those three because they're the biggest.
Yeah. That makes sense. Do you think you'll include more regions like next year and beyond, or are you quite happy just focusing on those three regions in Europe?
It's a great question, and we're looking for feedback on that.
Okay.
The good news is we don't make assumptions. So we're certainly listening to our members. I mean, we literally just released this last week. It's been a huge amount of work, and kudos to Kim and her team. They did an amazing job. But anyway, so it really going with our members and finding out really what they would like, and then of course media, and see what would be interesting to them as well.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. And so looking back at last year's results and comparing them with this year, do the results differ a lot from like last year to this year, adding in Europe? Is there some similar trends between US and Europe, are you finding?
The answer is yes and no. Obviously, there are plenty of similarities between the two, but the differences really are actually big. when we look at them. For example, we look at like utility management. That doesn't come up at all in the US when we survey our members, but yet that becomes pretty important. Energy, insurance, things like that, offering smart home. So we do find that there are definitely differences between the preferences in the countries. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And what would you say is driving the smart home market at the moment? Does that differ in all four regions, or is it quite similar still? Or
yeah, again, there's going to be differences between the different regions, but as a rule, security still leads the way. What I like to say is, Z-Wave leads the smart home. And it actually is true because security has really been proven over and over again to be the technology that draws the smart home, becomes the smart home, right?
Right.
Whether it's a door lock or a security camera, right? Or an actual full security system itself. So when we think of the broad description of security, I'd have to say it is across the board pretty much the driving factor. Although, believe it or not, in Germany, that's the one area where it's kind of close between that and just the thought of comfort more so than security.
Yeah, I noticed that actually,
Yeah.
and we're going to come on to that in a little while. Why
We
that
will.
is, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really interesting. And
It is.
would you say there's anything holding back the smart home industry at the moment? Something that the industry can really work on to really push the industry a bit more?
Well, I'll do the glass half full approach because clearly the development of the smart home is slower than we would like, but it is growing. But it's just not growing with that hockey stick that everyone has been expecting and holding their breath for. We're not seeing that yet, but we are seeing it develop. So that's encouraging, but not yet where we want it to be. I would say the things holding it back are a lot of the same things that we've seen. The confusion over devices, what works with what, the difficulty of setting things up. But the newer things that we're starting to hear about that haven't been brought up before are questions of support. Who owns the support, right? So if you bring in some devices from a security company, and then you bring in another device and add it in, who owns that support? Is it the security company? Is it the company providing your internet? Is it, this is something that's going to have to be sorted out. And I think that's also holding back some of the industry as well.
Okay, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
This smart, I know you just mentioned smart video doorbells in the home security when you were talking about security. They are most highly adopted in the UK and US according to a report.
That's right.
But very low adoption in France and Germany. Do you know why that might be? And is this something that could change in the future? Is it because they're just slow at adopting it, or?
Yeah, again, these are the kinds of things that we need to interpret. When we look at these data fields. And what we do note is that the actual living environments are different in different countries, stating the obvious, right? But when you look at Germany and France, if the smart devices tend to be growing more in MDUs, people live more in apartment buildings, multiple dwelling units, et cetera. And you don't really need the security there. There's not as much call for putting a video doorbell when you're in an apartment building or an MDU. So I think this applies to security as well. Is that if you're, and I remember having this conversation with actually a company in Germany about this, is that, in the US, single family homes rule, right? Not necessarily in all the other countries.
Okay. And the Wi-Fi networked camera adoption as well is quite high throughout all four regions. Does this mean, obviously you said that home security is quite a key driving factor. Why do you think that is?
Well, again, it comes back to what's leading into the smart home. So again, the broad description, the broad sense of what is home security. Talk about a door lock. I mean, a smart door lock is appropriate even in cases where you've got an MDU, right? Because you're not doing it as much for security reasons as, again, convenience, right? And I think that's the same thing kind of with the security cameras. It's some of it is convenience, some of it is they put them out by the window, for views. But again, we're doing their interpretations here, and clearly we find also that how the devices are getting installed, how customers are acquiring their systems. Where, for example, in Germany, they're much more likely to opt for professional installation, whereas in the UK, they're the least likely to opt for professional installation. And that also drives things like security. So when you're going with a professional installation, they're going to recommend options that perhaps you might not have thought of.
Yeah. And I mean, you said earlier, Germany, they're more revolved around comfort and convenience at home. Why do you think that is? Why is security not as big there, but they're more in tune with the comfort and convenience side of the, smart home integration?
Yeah, again, I really think it's about how and where people live. Security becomes an issue when you've got your single family home, certainly more so than anything.
Yeah.
And again, in the living environments where it's multiple units, there are other aspects. And again, let's go to the door lock, which you can say a door lock is security or door lock is convenience. Which category do you want to put it in? And so I think that's the technology itself does lend to convenience as well as security.
Yeah. Would you say that convenience and comfort is growing in the US as well, or is that just not really a priority for them?
Oh no, most definitely. And again, we start going down the rabbit holes of like voice control and other things as well. But there's no question convenience is important. The thing is that we do find still that it is security that is the entry for smart home, but that doesn't mean comfort doesn't rank very highly, because it does.
Yeah, still very important.
Very much so.
Yeah. What are the most important purchase considerations when looking at buying smart home devices throughout the 4 regions? Obviously, they might differ from region to region, I know.
Right. Well, recommendations from friends and family, of course, are always very important as well. Remodeling or building a new home is a very common purchase trigger that in all of the countries, right? Meanwhile, we found that British and German buyers are more likely to respond to a sale of a home or purchase of a home. But generally, it's a trigger event that causes people to kind of start looking at the technologies for the homes. And again, most of it, again, it has to wrap around the moving, buying, renting, things like that.
Yeah. Something in the report that I found really interesting was that almost half of respondents don't actually have a central hub or a control system for their home, and they just rely on the DIY ecosystem that they build. Why do you think this is? And do you think the smart home industry should be working harder to encourage homeowners to invest in that kind of central hub?
That's the great debate, hubs, right? What's the future of hubs? Well, I've got a couple of responses to that. First of all, I think that many people have a hub that don't realize they have a hub. And I think that's really the long-term direction. The example is a security panel, right? So you bring in a security system in the home, and the intelligence or the hub, if you will, is actually in the security panel. And consumers and homeowners are not going to think of that as a hub. Okay, so that's number one. So they may actually have one when they don't realize they have one. The next thing is that there's still been a focus on people buying thingies. I'm going to buy a thing. I'm going to buy I'm going to buy a light, or I'm going to buy a smart bulb, or I'm going to buy a smart thermostat. They think of it in terms of thingies. Therefore, there isn't the thought of how would this work with a system? How can I make this easier to use? This is the area where I think the industry has to work a little bit harder, and not talk specifically about hubs, because people aren't interested in the hub itself, but they would be very much interested in what it does, which means, again, the term we love, interoperability, right? When you have a hub, that generally means devices are going to work together, and even more importantly, give you a single app or a single way to control everything in one place, versus a bunch of thingies on your phones or on your touch panels.
I was going to say, we surely we need to be talking about how it's I think the people get quite scared at
Yep.
saying this is a really complex system, it's got a hub, it's going to be
Right.
really, and it's not. It actually makes it more simple, more convenient, and like you say, it's all in one place, then one area, instead of having the multiple
Mhm.
apps on your phone. So
Way back when I used to do all the installations, right? Yeah, and
mm,
customers said, "Yeah, I don't want anything complicated. I want something simple." Right.
yeah,
Well, did simple mean something simple to use? Because that could be complicated. Or did simple mean I don't want a lot of stuff, just give me one thing, which is simple, but not necessarily easy to use. So
yeah,
kind of, again, that's where
weighing it up.
interpretation is important, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, it's really interesting as well that all three EU countries showed a strong interest in no-cost home control systems bundled as part of their home energy service or home insurance policies.
Mm.
I'd never thought of that before, so that was a really interesting thing to me. Can you see this actually happening one day? And is this an avenue that the industry should start to explore more?
Yes, I think so.
Mm,
I think the issue is that the devices, things have to become interoperable.
yeah,
People expect things to work with the stuff that they own. Um, and again, no cost home control systems. One way or another, it's going to cost. So
yeah,
is it going to cost in terms of what your rates are going to be, or are you going to pay a little bit more for the home? I mean, so I don't know. It's really hard to say. So where is that cost going to be built in? And yes,
yeah.
the answer is no question. We're going to start seeing home insurance policies providing premium incentives for
Hmm.
having smart devices in the home, mostly a variety of sensors, whether it's water, fire, smoke, occupancy, theft, so on and so forth. So
Yeah.
no question. I absolutely can see things like this happening more as we go forward. Yeah.
It does make sense when you think about it like that, but yeah, it was it
Yeah.
was it was something that I'd never really thought about. Interoperability, you've
There it
mentioned it a
is.
couple of times.
Yes.
It's the big theme at the moment, and
Yes.
especially within the report as well. um how important is it to end users that their devices and systems are working together? And obviously Matter has just been introduced at the end of last year. How is that kind of helping with the interoperability issue?
Well, as you well know, interoperability has been a core or a requirement for Z-Wave from day one.
Mm,
So we've been screaming, things are interoperable for over 20 years. And the fact that the group got together for Matter and said interoperability is important is we're going, finally, someone else
yeah.
is saying the same thing, right? So how important is it? Well, it's absolutely critical for the
Mm.
long-term growth, the health of the marketplace, no question about it.
Yeah. Um, on page 18 of the report, there was a pie chart that showed um, the
Yeah.
interoperability is very important for over half of respondents' next home purchases. But it was surprising to me that 28% don't actually mind if their devices work together or not, and 18% actually won't think of it at all. Did that surprise you?
Yeah. Yes and no. Um,
Okay.
okay, so the surprise part is, well, just interoperability is a concept that I don't think consumers even think about. I mean, who thinks
Yeah.
about that, right? What I like to think of it in terms of they don't know what they don't know. They don't know that things should work together. All they know is this is frustrating. Why do I have to have so many apps on my phone? They may not even think about it.
Yeah.
That what I have one for my door lock, one for my thermostat, and I got one for not just all my lights, but one for my Hue lights and one for my Z-Wave lights. And I mean, so I don't know that there is enough awareness yet on the
Yeah.
fact that interoperability is achievable. So I think
Yeah.
some of it has to do with that. Some of it has to do with what I talked about before is thingies. People are buying thingies and they're very happy with that.
Yeah.
I got a few smart thingies and, cool.
And that
We're all,
works. Yeah.
I'm happy. My wife doesn't like it, but I'm good. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah,
think that's a
absolutely.
piece of it as well.
Do
And
you sorry, go on.
just the last piece of it really is once ease of use is made, I should say consumers are made aware of how easy systems can be made to use. I think interoperability will become a staple requirement, but not everyone is there yet.
Okay. I was going to say, do you see them numbers starting to decrease maybe in next year's report or the year after, where people are taking it into account a lot more? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the beauty of what's going on with Matter is you've got all the big guys, Apple, Amazon, Google, and Smart Things with Samsung. Product they're going to start rolling out soon, and they're going to have to be talking about it. So that will increase awareness too. So we're pretty happy about that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, can only mean good things. When looking at moving house, the majority of respondents globally would like to see basic smart home technology included as standard in their next home. Is this something we as an industry need to really start pushing? Should we be working with like governments and housing developers to ensure this is kind of the standard when building new homes now, would you say?
Yeah, great question about the governments. I think government should eat it that every home must be a smart home. But seriously, I can't really speak to what the government can or cannot or will do. But what I can say is that the Z-Wave Alliance members and the industry, the installation industry, our CEDIA friends, have been working with builders and pushing systems as part of homes as they get built and standards in many homes for quite some time. And like our friends at NICE, that formerly Nortec and Elan, they have very significant builder programs. So as we have to keep pushing it, the infiltration of this is still not yet that hockey stick growth, but we are making progress.
Yeah. Okay. And obviously the report said 41% of global respondents would pay extra for their new home to have smart home technology pre-installed before they move in. Will this become the norm over the next decade, do you think? Could this be a new driving factor for the industry?
My answer is absolutely yes. No question about it. I can give you two analogies. One, a technical analogy would be like Wi-Fi networks or networks in the home.
Yeah.
There's now an expectation that it's going to be wired for it. You're going to have Ethernet connections in various places in the home. That's an expectation. In terms of its features, I think about it, and again, I'm not as familiar in the European markets, but things like granite and marble counters in the kitchen, which were extras, but now everything's a luxury home, even entry level, right? But now it's an expectation. Now you're going to expect granite and marble counters, and I think that's going to happen. Yes, probably not as fast as I wish, but it's absolutely going to happen. Yes, this will be a demand, and it'll be a competitive disadvantage if homes don't have this product in it.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, looking at the report as a whole and its key findings, are you expecting big changes for next year's report, or do you think it will be similar to this year, or is it too early to say?
I know what I'd like it to be. I'd love to see huge improvements in adoption and expectations, but at this point, I really can't say it. It's kind of too early.
Yeah, sure. Finally, can you see any new trends developing that will affect the smart home industry over the next year?
Absolutely, and this can definitely be a lengthy conversation. So, but I won't expect us to go down. Number one is, of course, security and privacy. And when I say security, I'm talking about the security of the systems, not the homes and the people that actually own it. Privacy and security is something that governments are actually getting involved in, and I think it's appropriate, and thank goodness they are. On the positive side, we're definitely seeing more interest in AI and ML, augmented or artificial intelligence, depending on your definition, and machine learning as well. I know with my work with Silicon Labs, machine learning is definitely something that our customers are deeply engaged with working on. Contextual awareness, we've been talking about it for a while. We're actually starting to see it happen now. Again, the example I like to give is walking into your home and saying, hey, turn on the lights. And the system knows, well, where you are in the house, what lights to turn on based on what time of day, what time of year, where you are in the world, so on and so forth. And then The other trend, which was going to be much more permanent, is the work from home. Amy, as you and I both know, right? Work from home is going to continue and be more permanent. And the last item I'll throw in there, which I think is really exciting, is the concept of wellness, which is something more and more CEDIA type professional installers are really getting engaged with, because wellness means so many different things. Lighting and things with respect to circadian, your circadian rhythm, but we're talking about air purifiers, sound, visuals, colors, temperature. Wellness is definitely an important category that's going to be growing and growing.
Yeah, excellent. Oh, great. Thank you so much. That was a really good conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today, Mitch.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's always fun speaking with you, Amy.
Thank you.